The situation in the Middle East continues to escalate with no end in sight. Over the past few days, officials in Israel, Lebanon, Iran, and the US have traded warnings and threats, with one Israeli official going so far as to say that Israel would wipe Iran and Lebanon off the face of the earth if either attacked Israel. Considering Israel almost certainly possesses nuclear weapons, that threat could very well be literal. Even if they don't use nukes, they have more than enough conventional weaponry to achieve a similarly devastating effect, as they are currently doing in Gaza. In the 2 weeks since the terrorist group Hamas shocked the world by breaking out of Gaza and slaughtering more than 1,000 Israelis, Israel has waged a one-sided war of devastation. It's dropped several thousand bombs, leveling entire neighborhoods, wiping out whole family trees, and killing thousands of civilians and children. Now it's threatening to do the same to Iran and Lebanon. Could we be witnessing the start of another world war? Will Iran and its allied terrorist groups attack Israel, risking its wrath? If Israel expands its offensive to other countries, can it possibly win? And will the US remain by its side? Before we consider the hypotheticals, let's go over what we actually know. The last 2 weeks have seen unprecedented levels of misinformation flying around. With tensions high all around the world, spreading fake news and stoking hatred can have deadly consequences. Just look at the brutal murder of a Palestinian-American boy by his landlord, who stabbed the boy and his mother dozens of times because they were Muslim. The facts are as follows. In 1948, shortly after the creation of Israel, Israeli Jews fought with local Arabs, driving hundreds of thousands of them out of their homelands. One area that was left for Palestinians is called Gaza. It's a tiny strip of land by the Mediterranean Sea that's much smaller than some cities, such as London or Los Angeles. Packed in are more than 2 million Palestinians, half of whom are children. For almost 2 decades, Israel has kept this strip of land under siege, not allowing anyone in or out except by express permission. The territory is ruled by an Islamic terrorist group called Hamas. They are allies with Iran, which Islamic fundamentalists also rule. Iran also supports another Islamic terrorist group called Hezbollah, which is based in Lebanon and has fought with Israel multiple times over the years. Meanwhile, Israel is currently ruled by a far-right party led by infamous politician Benjamin Netanyahu. For years, Netanyahu and his allies have encouraged increased oppression of Palestinians. For example, the government has generally supported a policy of settling the West Bank. The West Bank is meant to be part of Palestine. However, Jewish settlers frequently steal homes from local Palestinians, claiming them as their own. These settlers often come from as far away as New York. With the support of the Israeli government and its military might, there is little the evicted Palestinians can do. Netanyahu also advocated for Israel to support Hamas. But wait, why would Israel support a terrorist group dedicated to destroying it? The logic seems to have been as follows. Israel has one of the most powerful militaries and expansive intelligence networks in the world, largely thanks to tens of billions of dollars of US funding. Hamas, despite some support from Iran, has nothing like this. By supporting Hamas, Israel could prevent the formation of a more reasonable, secular Palestinian resistance, which might gain more support from the world than an Islamic terrorist group does. Meanwhile, even with some support, Hamas could never seriously damage Israel, thanks to Israel's military and intelligence. That logic came crashing down on October 7th. Hamas launched a huge attack on Israel, taking it and the world completely by surprise. Well, perhaps not completely. It was later revealed that Egypt had warned Israel of a possible attack. Hamas committed unspeakable atrocities during the attack. Innocent civilians, including children, were butchered. The group also took hundreds of hostages. Israel responded to this violence with violence tenfold. In just 1 week, it dropped more bombs on tiny Gaza than the US dropped on the entire country of Afghanistan in a whole year. These bombs killed more children in several days than Russia has killed in its lengthy war against Ukraine. As these and other horrific war crimes came to light, millions began to protest around the world. It seemed to many like Israel was committing genocide against Palestinians. Why else would Israel refuse to accept Hamas's offer to release some of the hostages, instead choosing to bomb houses that might contain them? Why else would Israel be systematically destroying hospital after hospital, neighborhood after neighborhood, and why was it being allowed to do so? The US has, after all, largely stayed loyal to its longtime ally, at least it has in public. In private, Biden appears to have attempted to get Israeli officers to stop the worst of their war crimes, like blocking Gaza's supply of water. However, Biden has also positioned an aircraft carrier near the fighting. a clear threat to any other groups looking to get involved. The message couldn't be more obvious. If you dare try and support Hamas or otherwise get in Israel's way, you'll have to deal with us, the largest and most powerful military in the world. Experts think that the US doesn't really want to get involved, at least not directly. Biden has built a reputation as an anti-war president by finally ending the decades-long war in Afghanistan. Besides, direct intervention is extremely unpopular in the US. That's not to imply that Americans don't support Israel. Quite the opposite. Multiple polls have indicated there is widespread, bipartisan support for American aid to Israel. Americans seem happy for their country to support Israel, much as it's been supporting Ukraine. Money and possibly weapons are fine, but don't let any Americans die. Well, it's unfortunately too late for that. Dozens of American citizens have already been killed, some by Hamas, but others by Israeli soldiers and bombs. Perhaps that's why a huge majority of Americans support a ceasefire, or at least an attempt at negotiating. Hundreds of thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in cities around the country and around the world. After all, while Americans do strongly support Israel, they also support Palestinians, who are different from the terrorist group Hamas. With that in mind, will the US stop Israel from launching its full-on ground invasion of Gaza? That's right, Israel is readying itself for a brutal invasion of the Gaza Strip. That's not going to be easy. Hamas has had years to prepare. It has likely dug miles of tunnels and laid countless traps to catch invaders unaware, similar to the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War. As many wars in the modern era have shown, military power can mean very little when it comes to rooting out a dedicated armed resistance that views itself as freedom fighters with support from locals. An invasion by Israel will cause countless more deaths. That's the prediction of US officials. As one White House official said on the 24th, "This is war. It is combat. It is bloody, it is ugly, and it's going to be messy. And innocent civilians are going to be hurt going forward." Should the US try and stop this? Are they trying? The answer seems to be no. Elected officials from across the country, including Biden himself, have visited Israel to show support, and the military is sending advisors to help plan the invasion. The aim of the invasion is to destroy Hamas, but many are wondering if the destruction of Gaza is also an aim. After all, how can you realistically destroy a terrorist group that is totally embedded in a local population without also destroying that population? Of course, destroying or displacing an entire population is genocide. As you can imagine, this prospect is incredibly unpopular around the world. While the millions marching in the streets are protesting for the rights of innocent Palestinian civilians, two groups are more interested in the survival of Hamas. They are Iran and Hezbollah. For decades, Iran and Israel have been enemies, attacking each other in indirect ways. Both sides have launched missile and drone attacks on the other. They have also fought in Syria, with Iran supporting the current dictator, and Israel bombarding government assets. In fact, Israel recently bombed two major airports in the country. But the oldest front on this ongoing proxy war is Lebanon. Lebanon was once one of the most promising multicultural democracies in the Middle East. Now, it is buckling under severe poverty. In 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon, sparking the formation of a militant Islamic group that would become Hezbollah. The terrorist group is supported by Iran and has built up a huge arsenal of rockets and other weapons along the border. Since Hamas's attack, Hezbollah and Israel have fired artillery at each other almost every day. Lebanese leaders have said that they don't want a war, but with Hezbollah enjoying significant power in the country, they might not be able to stop one from breaking out if Hezbollah decides to support Hamas. On the surface, it seems ready. The deputy chief of the group recently said they were ready to face Israel on the battlefield. They would likely do this to help Hamas in the event that the latter was being totally crushed by an Israeli invasion. Israeli officials have issued stark warnings to anyone thinking of taking them on. Should Hezbollah attack, Israel's Minister of Economy said they would pay a heavy price. "Israel has a very clear message to our enemies," the minister continued. "We are saying to them, look what's happening in Gaza. You are going to get the same treatment if you attack us. We are going to wipe you off the face of the earth." Israeli officials like this minister view Iran as the head of the snake. Thus, if Hezbollah attacks, it is Iran who will be blamed, who must be punished, must be wiped off the face of the earth. Iran and its allies have issued their own threats. One Lebanese official warned that Israel would lose more than it would gain in an attack on Lebanon. An Iranian official said that any Israeli miscalculation could cause the powder keg that is the region to explode, with devastating consequences. If nothing else, that is true. Any further escalation will undoubtedly result in the deaths of thousands more innocent civilians. Millions of people on both sides, but especially in Gaza, are in danger of becoming victims of a war in the Middle East. Right now, it seems like Israel is determined to go through with its invasion, and it looks like the US will support it doing so. The question then is whether Iran and its allies will feel forced to intervene. Should the US stop Israel from invading, or should it support the invasion and get involved to protect Israel from additional attacks? Time will tell.